How do you mute it?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Competency and Bias LinkedIn Live. Today's topic is how to support Black people in the workplace. We have an amazing group of guests. Definitely gonna have some hard conversations. Just realize it's personal and people are gonna give their experiences. And I want everyone to sort of take a deep breath and make sure they digest it before they respond or think. Because I think it's important that we show support and that we also get to a point where we're starting to see other people's perspectives. Welcome, everyone. If everyone can introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Akila today, and tell me what belonging means to you.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Akila Today, founder of Change Today, diversity consulting firm. I have capacity, hit me up. Belonging to me means that if we're keeping it in the workplace, people can come how they are and be valued and appreciated. So I like to say, like, if you're thinking about a party, belonging is dancing however you feel.
Thank you. Carly?
For me, belonging is not just about, just to jump off what Akila said, is not just about being invited to the party. It's about also being able to dance when you're at the party.
Great. And Shirley, can you introduce yourself as well and tell me what belonging means to you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Shirley Johnson. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and energy healer for the last 15 years. When I think of the term belonging, I'm also thinking of, one, how important it is to have an inner sense of belonging, an inner sense of authenticity, and then to go along with the party metaphor, to be truly free and accepted to bring whatever authenticity is present and real to whatever setting you're in, and know that it is accepted and welcomed.
Thank you. Welcome. Nicole, you're next.
Yes, hi Ash, thanks for having me here. My name is Nicole Rabanellis and I'm an executive recruiter here at M&T Bank. For me, belonging means being authentic and being unapologetic when I'm in the workforce for being a Black woman.
Great. Then Eagle, you're next. I love your shirt. I finally got to wear one.
Yeah, I was having some technical difficulties. I think belonging to me is a feeling that the person that I am is the person that other people are seeing and the person that other people are comfortable with.
Okay, great.
And I didn't introduce myself at Meg for America.
The first question I have for you is, we've seen different responses from organizations. Some have done it fast, some have done it slow. I love the way you positioned it. Can you talk to me about how you think the responses are being handled?
Yeah, I think the digital age has changed everything, right? If you look at 15 years ago, what TMZ was and what TMZ is now, most people want it hot, heavy, right when it is. So in the digital age now, a day has become a week has become a month, and a month has become a year. So organizations are forced to quickly respond to any event that happens. I think this is the same. I think some organizations acted fast, especially when it happened, because it was a disgusting thing that was caught and it was everywhere. But some organizations took their time and had something that was thought out and a plan. So I think that's okay too. But I think the thing that is most prevalent is when there's a silence and people are known for that silence, that silence is taken as they're not being on board or they're not part of that alliance that's going against this problem.
And then can you talk to me about what everyone's angry about, the police system, the workplace? What do you think everyone's angry about?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, talk to me about what everyone's angry about, the police, the system, the workplace. What do you think everyone's angry about?
I'm having a really hard time hearing, so.
Yeah, me too. It's really bad. I can't hear anything you're saying.
Okay. Nicole, can you share a personal anecdote, a conversation with the manager and why she hadn't checked in and why Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, so for me, this watching the senseless killing of George Floyd hit on a personal level as a mom, with a Black son. And I wanted my manager to reach out to me, quite honestly, immediately, pick up the phone and say, hey, how are you doing? Check in with me. And that didn't happen immediately. And I was mad, quite honestly. I was sad. I was angry. And when she did call a few days later and started off the conversation by saying, I want you to know that I care. And I stopped her immediately and I said, let me tell you my story, what it is for a mom of a Black son. You have not walked in my shoes. You would never know what it feels like. And I shared a story with her that was really personal for me. When my son was 10 years old, he came to me and he said to me, he's like, Mom, we live a half a block away from school. I would like to walk to school. And my immediate reaction was, instead of celebrating his independence, or here's this child that wants to walk to school, my immediate reaction was, I can't protect my son if I'm not walking to school with him. And I sat him down and I said, if you're walking to school by yourself, here's some things that you should be aware of. If you ever get stopped by a cop, you need to be able to say to them, I'm a minor, and I don't want to have a conversation unless my parents are there. If you go to the store, please go with your hands out of your pocket, because I don't want anyone to accuse you of stealing anything. And the look of sadness that was on my son's face, and that was one of many conversations having with my son as he grew up and went through life. And when I shared that story with my manager, the phone got quiet. And her next response was, she said, Nicole, I get it. I understand. I've never had to have that conversation with my son. And I felt immediately it created a space, a safe space where I can go to her and just really on a daily basis or whenever, just have that conversation about what being Black means to me in the workplace. But the sentiment was also echoed, I would say, throughout the organization by the head of TA, where they said, talent acquisition, let me know what we can do, because we don't understand. I don't get it, but we want to learn and we want to do better.
Wow. Speaking of that, so there's a lot of people asking, how do you communicate and how do you handle the situation currently? And I don't think there's one answer to everything, right? Because you wanted to do outreach, and other people may not want that. And anyone speaks like that, because I think there's no cookie cutter answer right now. And so how do you approach that? Who wants to take that one on? Akila? I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Repeat the question.
So I think like Nicole wanted somebody to reach out to her, right? And I think that's amazing, but I think some people are trying to figure out a cookie cutter way of navigating this, and I think everyone has a different way to respond. Mm-hmm. You have to realize that. So what do you think the best approach is around that?
I think for me personally, for leaders in the workforce, for people who are supervising people, Black people in the workforce, one is to apologize. Because if you didn't respond in a timely manner, then you are completely oblivious and unaware of how much Black people my community is dealing with. That means that you have to go on a path and a journey of understanding your white privilege and values of white supremacy and how they're being upheld in the workplace. So starting with apology is the first thing. And then depending on the relationship with that individual, asking how they can support them. Some Black people want to, it's in a way similar to grief or the loss of someone important or a death, right? So we all handle grief differently. Some of us want to work extra. So there's Black employees who are just working. Other people need to essentially take bereavement and take time to process what's going on. And then some people are a little in the middle of just like constant check-ins to know what their individual capacity is. And so if that leader has that relationship with that employee, that's a conversation they should have. And that sets the expectation of accountability on the leader to support their Black employee, and also acknowledging what's happening in the nation right now. So what a lot of people do not realize is that Black people already have to work twice as hard in the workplace. They have to feel valued. They're getting passed over for promotions. They are being missed out on opportunities. They're being spoken over or treated differently when the other white guy or white woman doesn't even have to go through half of what they go through. But right now, President Twitter, that's what I call him, has literally tweeted, "Shoot them," which means the highest body in this nation said, I don't give any of the fucks about Black people or the people supporting Black people or any of the protesters. And now, even though Black people have known this for a long time, just as Nicole shared this of how she has had to educate and support her son, even though we know that, the highest body has said, hey, this is true. And also, for anyone else who's upholding values of white supremacy, go at it. Have a good time. So now Black people are holding a space of, okay, we're not valued and appreciated in our own country. And then we have to go into a Zoom and no one is acknowledging what's happening. And we have supervisors and they're not even acknowledging what's happening. And remember, we already don't feel valued and appreciated in the workplace. Start with sorry. How can I support you? And you can also read my blog post. There's 10 things that leaders can do to support employees.
Thank you. Shirley, do you have any thoughts around this as well?
I have lots of thoughts around this. One thing that I have been witnessing and noticing is how many big corporations, as well as small companies, are sending out, every email list or company I've ever purchased something from is sending out I'm standing in solidarity, Black Lives Matter email. And it looks very much like a template and a copy and paste, and you just put in whatever your business is. And so what I'm seeing, though, is that so many of these companies, and some have been companies and orgs I've worked for, I'm thinking of, y'all don't even know how to handle internal conflict when a Black person comes and tells you something has been off or that they're being treated differently. Why would I ever take this email seriously? And I think there's a big part here that's very surface that's happening in the workplace. And to Akila's point, this isn't anything new. Black people who work at non-Black companies, and probably at Black companies too, to an extent, have always been dealing with anti-Blackness in the workplace. And I'll say with the start of just people not capitalizing the letter B when talking about being Black. That to me is the biggest microaggression that happens. All these emails, people sending me stuff, and I'm like, just capitalize B, the same way you would capitalize the I in Indian, the C in Chinese, the H in Hungarian, put a B on my capital Black nationality. So there's so many microaggressions that happen in many workplaces toward Black people. And so there's a way, I think also, as I hear these stories, that part of this is about non-Black people, because sometimes it's white leaders, and sometimes I'm going to say it's non-Black leaders, other non-Black people of color in leadership positions who are also just as oblivious and just as upholding of whiteness as their white counterparts. Part of it is also that I think a lot of leaders who are not Black need to do some real soul searching and get into some internal, I'm an advocate for therapy. I'm a therapist. That's my work. I see everything through a psychological lens. I wouldn't trust anyone to come tell me they're sorry if they don't understand why they're sorry. Because it's like I said to someone the other day, they said, a white person, I don't feel like I should be angry. I feel angry, but this person, the Black person should feel angry. I don't even feel like I have a right to be angry. I said, no, you do need to feel angry. If you're not angry about this situation, then your words mean nothing to me. So part of it is also, I think, on a real internal level is, how are these leaders navigating their way to supervise Black folks and have done zero inquiry and zero amends or atonement around their own anti-Blackness, which at this point, everybody has in them if you live in this country?
I'd like to hear about what you guys are doing at Bank of America, because I think you guys have been putting together a strategy to sort of really push the needle on all levels with this.
Well, I won't really go into what's going on at Bank of America, but I'll say I can speak more to the environment. I think if we look at the environment, we were kind of going through a pandemic together, right? And I think the pandemic brought even though we're all apart, we're going to, as a country, as a world, even as a global thing, we're going to all social distance. We're all going to make ourselves uncomfortable for a little while for the greater good, excuse me. And with that, once we start pulling ourselves out of the pandemic, as things start to loosen up, the first thing that we're hit with was Ahmaud Arbery. Next thing you know, it's the incident in the park where the lady was falsely accusing the man and basically utilizing the police as her personal hitman. And then we had the incident in Minneapolis and with Floyd, and it just was an avalanche of, I thought we were together. I thought we were working together. I thought we were doing these things, that we are working for the better, the good. So I think that's why we have such a reaction that's visceral across all the races. Even if you go out to some of the demonstrations that are happening, it's not all Black people. Sometimes it's not even a majority Black people. Sometimes it's happening in places where there's very few Black places, because I think there's this enough is enough. Let's come together. Let's talk about things that we weren't talking about before. Because the killing, as tragic and as devastating, as disgusting as it is, that's not the first one that was caught on camera, right? But there's all these issues that are bubbling up to the surface. There's all these things that microaggressions that we've been going through for years. I have a thing with elevators. I'm not afraid of heights, but people clutching their purses, I'm always cognizant about me being a big Black person, tall Black man, and how I'm being perceived by other people and the thing. And I'm very sensitive to the movements that other people make when they don't make eye contact with me, when I can feel that they're uncomfortable. So that's just me. These are microaggressions that I've always felt. So I think when it comes down to it, while we have listening ears, we're trying to let people know this is exactly what I've been going through all this time, and let's talk about it.
Absolutely. Carly, you and I have talked before about this. You're CEO of a fashion brand, and hiring talent is somewhat of a challenge sometimes, right? And so I think the excuse is sometimes that people say, well, we can't find a qualified Black person, right? But then we've also had a society where we're constantly shifting skills, but somehow people are getting trained in those skills and then being deployed. So talk to us about your thoughts around that, and why aren't we reskilling the existing workforce in the Black community to get them the skills if you're saying there's no excuse for it, or there's no talent around that? You're on mute.
Sorry, I think I heard most of what you said, so correct me if I don't answer everything you asked me. But yeah, I think at this point it's laziness, and they're not putting the effort in to really diversifying their company. Hiring is not easy, and it's hard, and it's hard to find qualified people for your positions, and I understand that. But I think you become a better company when you're a much more well-rounded company. But companies are willing to train, whether it's mediocre white people or people who are just not at that level to get to that level. But they're not willing to do the same with the Black community. And I think there really needs to be education programs put into the Black community at a very early age. We're behind. We need to be given the opportunity to accelerate. And these whether it's internships, mentorships, opportunities to Black individuals specifically, so that they can start to learn about these fields, so that they can have some sort of education and know what they're getting into, and be able to compete. A lot of people don't even. A lot of students are interested in certain things but don't know where to turn because they don't have the connections. I'm in an industry that is very so I'm working fashion, and so a lot of that everyone sort of knows each other, has gone to the same schools, has gone to the same parties that, you know, a lot of young Black people just didn't have the opportunity to go to. And it doesn't mean that they're less qualified. It doesn't mean that they don't have something to contribute, because they obviously do, because Black culture is something that is referenced so much in the fashion industry. But there needs to be steps taken earlier on in a Black person's career and a Black person's young life that can put them on the right path so that they can get these jobs, so that they can get, whether it's a entry-level job, and work their way up and get trained and make their way up to the top.
Absolutely.
Can I?
Yeah.
I just want to say also, though, I think what's happening, or part of what's happening, is actually that this model of Black folks trying to enter white industries is also going to have to get defunct. Because when I hear this, Black people are the creators of culture. We are the culture creators around the world. You can hate me for saying it, but that is the truth. Culture comes out of Black communities. It comes out of any Black community. And so what happens is that our culture is often appropriated, where people pick and choose the things. But then, to your point, Carly, what happens is that who's picking and choosing it and making a lot of money from it doesn't actually get funneled back into the community from which it came. And so I'm actually a strong advocate right now, as we even have this conversation, about Black people not trying to climb the ladder in a white organization. It's, you know, I think what's also getting brought to the surface is it's time for us to start our own thing. We already have our own culture. We already have a lot of tools within our community. They might not look the same way that they look from a white gaze and a white lens. And that's part of also the decolonization of our own psyche as Black people, as thinking the only way to make it is to climb a white ladder.
Can you talk to me about unconscious anti-racism that all non-Black people have to go through and come to terms with?
Unconscious anti-Blackness.
Yeah.
Unconscious anti-Black racism. Yeah, I think this whole, you know, we live in at least in America, and not everyone is American. I'm just speaking from my context and from my own experience of the American system was built on how far away from Blackness one could get. And the more far away that you get, the more you can climb the white ladder. And so I don't buy the whole thing that it's just white people who are racist. It's a lot of people who are anti-Black, meaning against the what Black people stand for in this country. The sentiment that Blackness is something to be feared. Like this idea, right? You get into, people are looking at you and are like, you're going to be this kind of way. So I think that this is pervasive in our culture. And I think that it's a hard thing to reckon with for non-Black people to see, yes, you have some anti-Blackness in you. And if you don't, you probably have a parent who does, and you've heard them and have been exposed to their sentiment. And if you've been exposed to their sentiment, then it's probably living in you. And that is where the unconscious, right, is so important. I know you know that. Of really digging into what is unconsciously in our psyches that we are then playing out in reality, and not even knowing that we're playing out. That is harmful, hurtful, and that causes murder.
Yeah. I mean, like I do think that we are in an interesting moment where I think we're at a tipping point, right? And so it's amazing to see the whole community, white, Black, brown, no matter what color you're at or where you come from, we're all saying that this has to change, right? And I think the beautiful thing about this is that it's across all economic, socioeconomic levels as well. So there's a lot of positivity in this, and I have a lot of hope coming through this. If you were to list like 3 or 4 things that you think a company could do to help support this movement, can you each rattle off 3 or 4 things that you think would help companies embrace Black people in the workplace?
I think they can start by listening, right? Active listening and being engaged and wanting to do something, action.
Who's next?
I think one of the things too is, acknowledging the problem is internal and external. I think it was very easy for everyone to say, Black Lives Matters in a sentence, but then, kind of go back and introspectively look at your house and see, how you might be contributing to it in your leadership team. With exclusion there, you might be contributing to it in other ways where people in your house are not feeling like they're valued. So I would say the first step is not only acknowledging it, but acknowledging it internally and externally.
Great point. Kayla, you want to go next?
I would add to that people in the workplace who are looking to Black people for advice, they need to be compensated for their time, because so many Black people in the workplace are doing stuff for many reasons. So it's a better experience for them, for their peers. But we are tired, we are triggered, we're exhausted. So pay us. If you go to the second thing, had an external campaign where you're donating hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to great organizations that are supporting Black communities and bailing people out, you should have the same, if not more, go back into your Black employees for your business. You can't turn around and say like, oh, we don't have money to hire a consultant. Oh, actually, we can't, give money to the employee resource group. When you can, when it looks good for you externally, but not internally. So that is incredibly important. And then what you said, Ash, earlier, I just want to remind everyone to be careful with, we all want things to be different, because we don't. And it's very clear, because there are people who are against what is happening right now. We still have people who are saying blue lives matter, all lives matter. And those are still very hurtful statements. I had a conversation yesterday with a white person who's needing support in HR. And it took me multiple times to explain why, if their company didn't make a statement by last week, because last week was 2 weeks since we've had all of the injustices and the murders and lynching, okay, this is a fun word, of Black people. When you kill someone by a mob in public or by one person, that is a lynching. That I had to encourage her to be uncomfortable and understand, again, if you aren't making a statement as a business, you are upholding values of white supremacy. I'm not saying that person's a racist. I'm saying they're upholding values of white supremacy. So what Shirley was saying, white supremacy is part of the fabric of America. White supremacy means we want white people to be supreme and the best and the top at everything, which is why people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color, are working hard to feel valued and appreciated in the workplace, which is why we're doing so much. But what happens right now is white people need to be uncomfortable, white people that need to have difficult conversations, and white people need to get to the point of allyship to start the work to become an accomplice. An accomplice is someone saying, ooh, wait a minute, I'm adding to systemic problems. I'm adding to institutional problems. I'm proactively doing the work so that Black people don't have to do the work right now. And they're using their white privilege, because even though I'm an expert, I'm fabulous, I have my 3 degrees, people call me doctor, I have my firm, I do not have whiteness. And because I do not have whiteness, there's only so far I could go. White supremacy, the injustices towards Black people that are happening right now, it's not a problem for Black people to fix. It's a problem for white people, white passing people, and white assimilating people to fix.
Oh, Nicole, go ahead. You're on mute.
If I can just add to that, Ash, we need to make, it's an uncomfortable conversation, and it's okay to make everyone feel uncomfortable. But I think we need to say to our white colleagues is that it's okay to say you don't know, because it's not your reality, right?
Yeah.
And start that dialogue. And I can't tell you how many of my white colleagues have reached out to me and say, I don't know what to say. And I think that's okay as well. And we have to push the envelope, right? For so long, we've been stifled in the workplace that now we need to just have that conversation. And if they're uncomfortable about it, so what? Like right now, I feel that words don't mean shit to me, right? So I need you to back up your actions with your words. Because for so many years we've been how many years have the topic of diversity been at the forefront of organizations, and yet here we are.
No, absolutely. I do think there's a delicate balance for those who are actually trying to help and they're not sure what to do, and if we're giving them resources and they're actually putting the effort in, like Akila says, do the work, right? Then we also have to kind of meet them somewhere and say, okay, now that you're done the work, let's work together and do this right. I do think
you really have to be careful with that language, because we don't have to meet anyone anywhere. There is enough information that is out there for people to figure it out. Yeah. So when I'm saying, becoming an ally or being an accomplice, they have to do the work to figure it out. And yes, we can get to a point of collaboration, but what collaboration is taking away values of white supremacy from the workplace, right? And so it's so that I don't have to come in as a diversity consulting firm and explain why they had to diversify their board and leadership. That is work that they have to do because they still have the power. There's only so much power I have. So our words are incredibly powerful, and we have to be mindful of what we are saying, and we have to continue to put pressure on white people saying I don't know where to start, and I'm uncomfortable, and I can say, I am so proud of you. I think that is great. Follow my resources on Instagram. Follow my resources on LinkedIn. I am here for you right now for as long as my mind, body, and spirit allow me to talk to all these white people. And that's what it is. I will do that because I am an expert to help the Black community. But that expectation should not fall on Black employees in the workplace. I've been doing this for 5+ years. As of 2 weeks ago, all of a sudden I'm popular. The same demand is there in the workplace, supporting Black, Indigenous people of color. But now because companies don't want to look bad, and now because the Black dollar has more power than before, and now because white people who are already allies or accomplices are saying, who is your leadership in your company? Who are the Black people? Now they're coming to me to say, ooh, we need diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, I'm here. I'm happy to help you with that. But you cannot just have the words, the statements, the Instagram posts. The actions have to match with that too. I know I sound like a broken record, but again, we have to be careful with, this is not our responsibility. The white people in power need to do it. I'm a guide, but the white people in power need to work on that in the respective workplaces.
No, 100%. But I do think we want to make sure that you have a seat at the table in making those, if they're going to change and fix things, we want to make sure it's not done in a box, right? It's isolated without input, right?
And Ash, if I can add, so I'm in a wealth management space, right? And I said to colleagues I've had conversations with, if a client calls and asks and we're trying to meet a project or a deadline, right? We never tell a client that we can't do it. We just get it done. So what we need to say to our Black employees is that we hear you, we acknowledge you, and we are going to get it done. We're going to fix this problem.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Can you guys talk about impact? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to add also, I think also when we're using the term diversity, and one thing I'm noticing is the only people who use the term diversity is you have to be a white organization. And by white, I'm not just saying white people. I mean an organization that is white assimilated or upholding white culture. That's the only people who need diversity. And so really the switch is, if an organization is really ready to let go of their whiteness and not be a white organization, not be a white bank, not be a white wealth management company, not be a white fashion brand, not be a white school. And that, in my opinion, is that's going to shake a lot of people up. This is not easy. This is revolutionary. This is calling for people to get shook all the way up, all their values, all the things they have not seen, that they have invested into not seeing. So, I also think even just this conversation, do you want diversity or do you want to be a white organization? Do you want to truly be a multicultural organization? And once I see who's ready to be a multicultural organization, all right, then we have something to talk about. But if you're wanting to cling to being white culture, but just have some diversity inclusion initiatives, then you're still in the system. You're still doing the same thing.
100%. It's got to be part of your DNA that you're really doing this. So can we talk about, there's a lot of intent right now, but what's the difference between intent and impact, and how do you measure it and make sure it's happening, right? Because I can say I want to do something, but if I don't actually follow through with it, then all I've done is PR and marketing, and it's the same stuff that's happened before. Anyone want to take that one? Akila, you want to talk about that? Intent versus
Sure.
impact?
I mean, intent versus impact. It's in my article that's on LinkedIn and also my blog post. So again, like I mentioned earlier, intent, we are supporting the Black community. We're putting all these money into external things, not for the company. But the impact is, oh, you just laid off a whole bunch of people of color. So how come magically you have all this money to donate, right? So really being mindful of what's happening. And I think another important thing about intent versus impact, with all these statements that are coming out from businesses, Shirley is absolutely right. Diversity, equity, inclusion, I prefer belonging is a better term for what should happen in the workplace. Diversity, equity, inclusion, because you can have all those things and still like they don't belong in the workplace. Are we committed to being, and if we're not, just be white. Just be white and be proud that you're white. We're going to support white people, and that is fine. But don't, again, intent versus impact. Don't say you're going to do these things and still operate as a white institution. There's a question here that I know that is a lot doing, which is having Black manage the multi-strategy plan for diversity and inclusion work. Again, it is not an expectation for Black people to fix the problem that white people have created in the workplace. It's for white people to do. If that Black person wants to be part of the work, which is to be involved in that, intent versus impact. If you want them to do that, the impact should also be a title change and an increase to do the work. They're elevated to an executive saying highest level. So that manager should become a chief of diversity or whatever you want to call it, anti-racism work, people, whatever you want to call that. But they should be elevated to, so versus impact, external and internal messages, as well as how you're working with who would like to do the work, who have been freed to do the work.
Absolutely. Agu, do you have any thoughts around that too, intent versus impact? I think you're on mute. No. I think you're still on mute. Oh, there we go.
All right, sorry.
Okay, gotcha.
I think intent versus impact is always going to be everyone always supposedly has good intentions, right? So seeing the impact is going to be the next litmus test when we actually see impact, when we see the changes come in as quick as they can come and as harshly as they can come, the changes come fast. But I think we're all now in the wait and see. But like I said earlier, I just don't think the wait and see is as long anymore. I don't think if changes aren't done in 6 months, things are going to let up. And I think the feelings that have been like bubbling to the top all this time are going to continue to be there and fester even more. So I think this is an opportunity. I wouldn't look at it as it's something that's insurmountable. It's going to be hard, but it's an opportunity for things to get right and for people to do the things that they should be doing and live up to their creeds.
Definitely. Carly, how do you think Black people should support each other in this movement? Carly, can you hear? Or Nicole, I'll ask you then. Nicole, how do you think Black people should support each other in this?
I mean, we need them to be an ally, right? And we need them to acknowledge the issue, the problem, and just say, I'm open to listening, to learning, and to be an ally. I can't tell you how many of my white colleagues have reached out to me and said, what can I do? I want to be part of the conversation, but I also want to be part of the solution. And really being open, you have to come with an open mind and be willing to have that uncomfortable conversation. and just support whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely. Shirley, you have any thoughts around that?
The question: Black people can support other Black folks?
Yes. I think that's important.
Yeah, I love this question, and I've been really reflecting on this too, because one thing I'm wanting to put into place in just my own life, because I don't technically work in a workplace at this point, is making room for every single Black experience. Because some Blacks don't care. Some Black folks are deeply invested in what's going on. And it's important that every single Black person, I believe, I want to hear every single Black experience, even the ones that I don't agree with, even the ones that don't resonate with me. That is so imperative that we support and listen. We do the listening. Nicole brought that word up a lot today. The listening of one another, even though we might not share the same nationality, we might not share the same place that we grew up in. We might not share the same socioeconomic background, et cetera, that because at least the way I see it, everyone is a fragment of me and I'm a fragment of everyone. And this is so important. That's my heart, right? Listening to Black people is my heart. That's what I do. That's my purpose on this planet. That's what I work with. That's my goal of my work, is for Black folks to feel deeply listened to, even when I might not have the same experience. So I think it's important that there's room for every single type of opinion at the table.
Absolutely. Carly, do you have any thoughts around that? I guess you can't hear it. Tequila, you want to add to that?
Okay. Sure. Carly, can you hear me?
I can hear
yes, you
you.
can.
I can hear you. That's
Okay.
just when you said Carly, I heard you say Carly, but literally, the last time you spoke, I pretty much didn't hear anything you said, sadly. So yeah, sorry.
I wanted to just ask you. No, you're fine. Ash just wanted to ask you how to support the Black community or supporting each other.
Sorry.
Or if you had any advice or lessons or feedback. How you're supporting your Black peers.
Oh, I think it's important for us to reach out to each other, to also I've had some friends, not friends who also run their own businesses or whatever, that I've also had to remind them. I'm like, you need to speak out too. This is something that we're all struggling with, and it's something that we're all having difficulty talking about. We all have different comfort levels, and yes, it's difficult for non-Black people to approach this, but I don't feel like we have an excuse to not talk about it now. We've finally actually been given an opportunity where we can really say something, and people are finally starting to listen, that this is the time that we actually need to say something, that we need to take action, that we need to be an example or be receptive to whether it's other non-Black people coming to us for guidance or other Black people looking to us as inspiration, or and so I think it's important for all Black people to have a voice right now at this time, and to really speak up, no matter what it is that they're going through, because we all need to share our different stories, and to be honest, there's I also struggled with that too when this whole thing was unraveling in the last couple of weeks. It's, I'm from the UK. I didn't grow up here. Not that to say that there's not racism in the UK, because there absolutely is. But, my Black experience is somewhat different. And, we also, as Black people, have our individual sets of privilege. Is definitely not white privilege, but I still think, I have been living in the States for almost 16, 17 years or something like that now. But my experience here and my story is just as important as somebody else's. And I think it's important for us to support each other in each of our own individual stories and journeys.
Yeah, definitely. Akila, you want to add to that?
Sure. Well, one, are wonderful inspirations for me. I have the pleasure of working with Shirley and she's wonderful, great. And Carly, by being in a beautiful Black place. And so you're always the resistance, and I always love stuff. To echo what Shirley and Carly are saying, a patient right now, so she dropped off. It's important to take advantage of we do have unearned privilege, regardless of your ethnicity or your background. And as it's being echoed and shared here, for Black people, this is what I need. And whatever that circle may be, the friend group, we're comfortable with vocalizing now since everyone is discussing in one way or another, whether they're for or against. And so to use that opportunity, I think it's also really for community, my Black friends, is connect back to and the most can happen right now when we're feeling be less than, or we're fighting so much, or we're tired, we're back to why Black people are amazing.
Great. Do you guys have any other topics you want to discuss before we open it up to questions? Nicole, you're on mute, I think.
I just want to say for our leaders that are out there listening, right? What we Black employees need for our leaders is to, one, acknowledge your white privilege. And as Black employees, we need to know that our leaders have empathy and that they are open to hearing, you know, as Shirley mentioned, not every Black employee has the same experience. And I would say that if I was a CEO of a company right now, I would sit with my Black employees and hear their stories. And everyone's story is different, and really come up with an action plan on what we can do to make the workplace better for Black employees. And I'm hoping that that conversation starts happening sooner than later, and we're able to, as I said earlier, for me, words don't mean anything, right? So I need the action. And again, just be able to listen, learn, and want to engage, but also want to really make a difference.
I want to echo the active listening and for color. I recommend having a third party session so that it can to an evil like a even like you have to act a certain way. Leadership can encourage having frank and open discussions, and then using it, Bill says, like the action absolutely have to match towards becoming an anti-racist company or organization.
Definitely. Oh, Nicole, you're on mute again.
Saying just at the core, we need to know that our leaders believe in humanity and want to do what's right.
Ego, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would add too that, you know, a lot of times I think there are representation a little bit with Black people at companies, but I would say for leaders to look past working with someone that they feel comfortable with and be comfortable with someone who will challenge some of the way that they think and challenge the way that things are and come with different perspectives, not just try to hire somebody who they think is just a different shade of the person that they want. But actually look to the true diversity and look to other people's experience as something that they could appreciate and would add benefit to their companies.
Definitely. Okay, so let's open up to questions. If anyone has any questions, please type them into the chat and we'll make sure we try to address them. The first one was, I'm a white CEO, small company. I'm organizing things, but would it be better if my black managers led the multi-strategy plan? And is that wrong? Akila,
I'll let Akila take that
I
one.
answered it already. I answered it. Didn't do another question.
Okay.
Yeah, she answered that when she was talking about the compensation part of it. So I thought that was a good answer.
Is there any other ones? Have any other ones that are up there?
Just to add, Ash, to what Akila said earlier, right? I feel like talent is created equally, but opportunities are not. So as an organization, we need to make sure we create opportunities for Black employees, Black candidates.
Well said. I love that.
And I'll add to that only because one of the things that I was going to put whenever closing, but I'll say it now. One of the things that I often hear when it comes to hiring a Black person is, okay, let's go ahead and take a chance on them, or we're going to take a risk and go ahead and hire them. And sometimes I think people think that's a compliment. But to me personally, in my career, I felt like, I've come with this many accomplishments. I've done this, I've done that. And for you to feel like, you know what, let's go ahead and take a risk and hire them, I just don't feel like we're being looked at on an even term. So I think that's one thing in the vernacular that I constantly see when it's talking about hiring a minority, promoting a minority. It's always equated to some risk or, taking some shot in the dark, when in actuality, they're more or just as qualified as anyone else. So I think that change in terminology is something that would be very helpful in the conversation that we're having now.
You're absolutely right. You're basically setting somebody up for the fail, right? They have to do 10 times better than someone else if they've already been defined that way.
Correct.
I absolutely agree. In my last 9-to-5 job that I had, a doctoral preferred position, my white boss told me in a one-on-one meeting, I didn't think you were that smart to interview you, but you are smart. And so statements like that are incredibly hurtful. I met all the qualifications. I actually exceeded some of the qualifications was because of my Blackness. And when I asked why he would say that, and he was like, oh, I guess it's offensive. And he fired me the next week because what he realized that I was to do the work that I was to do. He realized that maybe I was too smart for what he wanted, right? So the talent is there, and right, and I was taken away. So it all worked out. But their microaggressions are incredibly hurtful. I see the question.
There's another question that came up that I think is pretty good. I've been doing talent acquisition and recruitment for the past 6 years, and I find that companies are quick to attribute Black candidates as not being cultural fits. What are some ways in which you confront and eliminate the bias in your organization around this?
I'll take that for a little bit because I have all these professionals that are going to give a better answer than me. But I'll say this: the one issue that I have in general with things, and I'm seeing in the people that I mentor, the young men and women, and they're doing a much better job than my generation did, is they're interviewing the companies when they're getting interviewed. So they're asking these questions like, "Do you have this? Do you have that?" In terms of will I be supported? And they're asking these questions. And that's something that in my time, we would have never done an interview because we knew we wouldn't get the job. So I think companies and people have to start interviewing when they're interviewing and interviewing when they work there. Like, what are the next steps? What are you going to do with this? In light of all this, I just saw a man killed by a police officer that kneeled on his neck for 9 minutes. Are we going to have a conversation internally about it? How are things going to change with us after this? So I think us interviewing people and interviewing the interviewees is a way, the first step that I think that we need to do now. So I'll yield to the ladies because I know you guys are typically better than me.
I just want to remind everyone that culture fit basically means that the person doesn't fit in a company that supports white supremacy, the values of white supremacy. So if we go from a place of belonging, everyone should belong. We're going back to what Nicole said, the talent. We want the person to do the job. I mean, maybe that's awareness. So maybe we can, or maybe hold us accountable to making sure we're a place of belonging. Culture fit comes up, that is something that you take back to your people. If you have a diversity person, work. Nicole, I'm sure you have stuff to add.
Can I actually add to that real quick? Akila, I think you might have taught me this, but it was we talked about cultural fit in organizations, and we just have to get rid of it. And right, and so one of the things you said that was a good technique, from what I remember, was 5 whys, right? And if you keep asking why, if they have to come up with 5 reasons why they're not qualified, and usually they won't be able to find that, and that kind of tells you it's an issue with race.
You can find it out in three ways. Sometimes.
Nicole, Carly, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I mean, personally, I hate, that's how strong I feel about it, when a hiring manager say to me, this person is not a cultural fit. And I put them on the spot. I call them out. Explain to me what that means, that they're not a cultural fit. And you immediately see them, you know, start at loss for words, right? So I gloss over that. I think I'm in a position where I really get to have an open, honest dialogue with my managers, call them out on it, and really push back. And I would say to someone who's in diversity, you need to challenge that person.
I think, there's, if someone's qualified for the job and they're hardworking, there's no such thing as they're not a cultural fit. It doesn't make any sense. If they're qualified and able to do the job, then there's no reason. To me, it doesn't even make sense. As long, you know, if they're qualified and work hard and have, those are the main requirements. Obviously, you have to be able to get along as a group, but outside of that, you know, if you don't know how to play golf, you can learn how to play golf. You know, if that is what's needed for the organization, I think it's absurd.
I agree. Nicole, you're on mute again.
I go back to our mission statement, which it talks about integrity, right? So I'll say, well, what questions did you ask along the lines of integrity to find out that this person wasn't a cultural fit? And it typically, oftentimes, just shuts the entire conversation down.
All right, so we're almost out of time, so I'd love to get closing remarks from each of you. If you have anything else you want to add or make sure we leave the audience with, please share. Akila, you're on mute.
Sorry, Taylor Berry has a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Taylor Berry, what advice do you have for young Black people in their career to affect change in large organizations? So I'll close with that. Okay. Boundaries. If you're doing work and it's meaningful to your joy, you feel valued and appreciated, do it. But I think if you're starting to feel exhausted and tired and appreciated, there is no expectation that Black people want to, and they're being compensated for it. So just have some boundaries. The last thing I'll say is uncomfortable, and being uncomfortable is for anyone who's new to supporting Black match by doing work.
Absolutely. Nicole, you have?
I just wanted to say that leaders have a responsibility to Black employees to loudly affirm to them that we are working in a place that's free of racism and discrimination, and to start the conversation with that, to make us feel like at work it's a safe space.
Carly?
Yeah, and I think if leaders are doing that, I think it's really important for Black employees um, to use this time in particular to speak up, to talk about whether, things that have gone on in the company that they felt uncomfortable about, or felt that they had spoken up about certain things before and it was never addressed. I think, and I think a lot of people feel, especially people who are not leaders, who are employees in companies, don't feel like it is their place to say certain things, or they are at risk of losing their jobs. And I think there is a way to do it that it doesn't have to feel like, we are attacking white people, because I know that I've been seeing a lot of people being scared about being attacked by the Black community, that the Black community is out to get everybody at the moment, which is not the case. It's just about educating. And I think it's important for people to speak up, educate, and let their leaders know how they've been feeling and what has been going on in their company, especially in big companies, that they don't. Some leaders don't necessarily know about certain things that have been going on lower levels, and it's important that everyone is informed so that they can take proper action.
Ego?
Yeah, I think I would be happy if we continue growing. And when I say that, like I said earlier, with the pandemic, we found this shared sacrifice, this shared uncomfortable feeling that we all had, and we did it all together. And I think Americans in general, we've all been in places where we've done things that seemingly were impossible, but we got it done. So in that same spirit, we're going to have to be uncomfortable for a little while in order for us to get the muscles to the right level. This is like weight training, where we're going to have to, it's going to take a few months, it's going to take a few years for us to get to that goal, but we have to start somewhere and we have to go with it. So I'm hoping that, instead of some people looking at this as a negative, that many people look at it as a positive, that this is a whole world that they're hearing about that they might have never even known. They might have never known that your coworker that you see next to you every day is getting harassed by the police on his way to work. You might have never known that in the elevators, everyone is clutching their purse when your coworker walks in. But now that you do know, and now that these are things that you're finding out, take it and turn it into action. So that's kind of what I'm hoping will happen universally and globally as this thing starts to, get more wings than they even have right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, to go to Carly's point, the Black community is not attacking anyone. They've been attacked for 400 years, and all they're trying to do is get their voices heard right now. So if you're not in the community and you feel attacked, you should suck it up, essentially, at this point, because it's not against you. It's not about you. It's about the Black community. Let's end it with that. Thank you guys all. It was amazing. I'm honored to have this platform.
Thank you for having us, Ash.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye.